you everybody for taking the time to be with us today. Really appreciate it. I know it's in the middle of the week. It's a good break to have in the middle of the day. So we really appreciated you all being here. For those who don't know me, I'm Jeannie Pons. I'm the VP and Country Manager for VaynerMedia Canada. And as you know, we're turning one. I can't believe it's been a year already. And well, we're celebrating in the best Vayner fashion with a pack drop. We have this wonderful panel and a pack drop. PAC stands for platforms and culture. So we're going to be chatting about all things that are happening in the platforms that are relevant in culture right now. For that, we have a wonderful moderator. She is an incredible force for us at Vayner. She is an incredible leader, and it's my honor to introduce you to our Chief Marketing Officer, Avery.
Woo! Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Jeannie, for spearheading all things Vayner Canada. And thank you to our wonderful panelists for joining us today. We're going to start off with a quick round of introductions. I know we have a mixed audience. We have some creators, we have some brands, we have some deep friends of Vayner, we have some new friends to Vayner. So we're going to have a little bit of a mix, and we'll spend about 30 minutes on this panel. Then we'll have some snacks, some lunch, and we'll get on with our day. So thank you all for joining us. I'm going to start off by introducing Mr. Patrick over here. Patrick, tell us about who you are, what you do, what brings you here today.
Oh, that's a lot. Working? Perfect. So Patrick Tremblay. And first of all, thank you to Jenny, Avery, thank you. And pleasure with you guys, meeting the panelists as well. Look forward to hearing what you guys have to say over the next 30 minutes. So Patrick Tremblay, I'm a marketing director for our ready-to-drink tea portfolio. So I oversee Brisk, Pure Leaf, Lipton Iced Tea, as well as some of our joint ventures that we do with Starbucks as well from a ready-to-drink coffee perspective. What other questions did you...
What brings you here today?
Oh, yeah, what brings me here today? Yeah, so, hey, listen, apparently I have something valuable you guys might want to hear about, so hopefully I bring some value to your day. But actually, I'm here to listen to these fellas here and, quite frankly, interact with a lot of you here today because, we're on a journey to really understand particularly, Gen Z, young millennials, and what makes them tick and how do we reach them from that perspective. So I'm here to share my... limited wisdom, I suppose, but to really gather the wisdom from all of you today.
Maximum wisdom. And if anyone is thirsty, we have a lovely selection of some of the beverages Patrick mentioned. Back there, I would recommend a Brisk. They're delicious. But we got everything. All right, on to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what brings you here today, and what you do.
How are you? Hey, everyone. I'm Crash.
And I'm Adams.
And we're Crash Adams. So we're musicians. We're from Toronto. And we've pretty much been stumbling through life on social media to kind of help spread our music around the world. And it's been a great run so far. So we're here to kind of talk about that and pick everyone else's brain and see what we can learn from you guys as well, because you guys are also experts in your field. And we're thankful to be here today.
Crash Adams is an incredible duo that really built a lot of their, fame off of social media. I think we're tracking well over 10 million followers across platforms. So we're super excited to hear what you have to share. And Gregor, you're also a creator. Tell us a little bit about you. What brings you here today?
Keep that one inside. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Gregor Reynolds. I'm a content creator. I started on Vine. I really started on YouTube when I was 6. But I started getting following on Vine and built a following with my dad. Yeah, that's right. R.I.P. Rest in peace. Just a moment of silence, please. It's good. That joke always lands a little bit, too, so it's good. It's still got some juice. But yeah, I've been doing it as a job for a solid 10 years now that we're in 2024. Now I mostly specialize in comedic dialogue videos, mostly short form on all the short form platforms, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Snap.
Early adopter at age 6, so we're gonna have to get into more on that. And Grace, you're from the home team here, so tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Vayner.
Hi, R.I.P. Vine. I miss Vine every day. If you know, you know. I'm Grace Mitchell. I am the Group Creative Director for Vayner in Canada. I lead all things creative. I've been here for 6 months now, which is crazy. We're building a brand new creative team locally, which is so exciting. So yeah, thrilled to be here.
All right, so we've got a really nice mix of perspectives coming from agency side, from brand side, and from content creator side, all sort of focused on the Canadian market. And Patrick, you're overseeing this huge portfolio. You've got this incredible career at PepsiCo. You mentioned that you're focused on understanding young millennials and how they consume content. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what you're seeing and what you're observing potentially from the Brisk brand? Because I've seen some hot work coming out recently.
Yeah. So we, joined the Vayner team and partnered with them probably 2 months ago now already. And listen, the approach is not rocket science. If you want to really cater to that Gen Z, younger millennial consumer, social is the way in. But how do you break through with them on that platform? And I think what we've seen so far is tremendous success in terms of the content that we've put out, thanks to Grace and her team, from that perspective. And it's really about social listening. I think for us, what we have found so much is we spend lots of time as marketers doing research to try to understand consumers, when really ultimately in a day, you can do all these third-party research, but if you actually just spend the time reading comments or just observing people and how they interact on social, man, there's a ton of great insights there. And, I'd say that's been the piece that we have really seen as a step change on my portfolio in particular. And, we have a brand on Brisk that has tremendous love within Gen Zs, but we were never sure how to break through. And we seem to be doing that now. And it's, again, courtesy of Grace and her team and how they're really bringing it along. But yeah, it's not about how do we get to them. I think we know how. It's how do you talk to them? I think that's the piece for us that's been intriguing, and I'd love to hear as we go through the afternoon, how do Gen Zs want to be spoken to?
I love it. And looking at this room, I think we've got some Gen Zs right here. So we'll do a focus group after. But I love your point around social as an insights engine, because I think oftentimes marketers think about social as a distribution channel, and it is that. But the insights engine component is so underutilized and sort of misunderstood, I think, a lot of times. But from a content creator POV, y'all know that because you're up in your comments. Crash Adams, talk to me a little bit about how you all use comments, like how you mine for insights and how that shapes the content that you create.
I think at the end of the day, when you've made so many pieces of content, it's really just about making content that you love, but also content that the people want to see. There's specific things that within the algorithm will go off, and there's things that people just don't want to see, and that's usually how it works, right? But I'm just, going through comments is definitely a good way to do it, but it's also looking at the analytics, the watch time. There's the, for example, on YouTube, there's the thumbnail, seeing how the click-through rate is on that, the retention. All these things are important. It's not just one piece. It's like so many pieces together that create that one piece of content that will go viral or be able to connect with people on an emotional level.
Yeah, maybe give us an example of something. You mentioned thumbnails are critical, and this is something that many folks will know. Like Mr. Beast does hundreds of thumbnails of one video. And why does he do that? Because the performance actually varies so dramatically. Maybe give us some examples of other things that you all dig into that you see make a big difference in performance.
Definitely. So we've seen that even there's certain keywords. Well, once you find an idea that the first and foremost is the video needs to sit well with the audience. Once the video sits well with the audience, let's call it, I don't know, let's say you get 500,000 views. 500,000 views is great.
For Crash Adams, peanuts. But anyway.
That's funny. That's great. But let's say now that same video, which was already a good video to begin with, also had certain keywords that were optimized for certain audiences for them to be able to see it and watch that whole video. That 500,000 might turn into 750 or whatever it may be. And then there's a nice extra chunk of an audience that you've now captivated just because you hit the right space. Example, we have a series where we go around promoting our music and we say, we go up to people and we say, excuse me, can you rap? Excuse me, can you rap? And from this series, the title is actually I can't believe this happened when we approached a random rapper on the street or whatever it is. And that comes from Adams doing a lot of research on these different platforms of, okay, what's hitting with the specific audience that we're trying to target to. And that's kind of how we
I love it. In Vayner language, we would call that cohorts. And then we would call what you're talking about, this idea of sort of doubling down. That's a huge piece of what we do for brands. And I think it's so funny to sort of see the creator side and then also the brand side, because at the end of the day, it's fundamentally very similar, using the same platforms, trying to appeal and break through to often similar audiences. But Gregor, you mentioned Vine, which we were huge fans of Vine as well. Now you said you're on the short form video train. How are you thinking about sort of mining for insights and knowing what's going to work with your audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty similar. I think for my stuff, like being like comedic dialogue videos, there are ways
What is comedic dialogue? Give us an example. Say something funny.
To describe it, where it's like it feels not too vague, but it's definitely still vague. It's essentially like me talking to myself, and it's videos that are generally in like the 30 to 40 second range. Jokes that are kind of like more obscure and require that maybe like 30 seconds for that payoff to come at the end. Which that does mean that sometimes I'll post a video and be like, this is the funniest thing I've ever made. And then it's a flop. And I'm like, all right, what about this platform? And it flops everywhere. I'm like, okay, I can learn from that. But I guess for me, it's really taking on topical elements and taking them in places that like no one expects them to be talked about or no one expects them to be joked about. And then using kind of different formats of comedy that have worked in the past to kind of like help future videos gain success. An example I'll give that I've been toying with recently that's been doing really well for me on YouTube and Instagram specifically is kind of like what I call like an over-explaining comedy, where I did a video that was like, the person you sit next to in your lecture for the entire semester, but like you never know each other's names, but like you also have this weird bond because you know each other's personal lives and what they did on the weekend. And like all of the jokes in that video aren't even like set up punchline necessarily. It's literally like, hey, you want to be friends? Yeah, okay. Does that mean that we're not going to talk to, or we're not going to ask each other our names for the next 3 months, but we're going to tell each other all our intimate details and whatnot? It's like taking that approach, and I was like, okay, that works. Let me apply that to a different scenario and a different scenario. Figuring out different, more kind of like nuanced techniques has really helped me kind of find more of a groove and find channels to success that are more surefire than just a random post.
I like that. And also I think it's interesting, you said you were a short form creator, but then you just talked about these sort of 40 seconds. So how are you sort of playing around with that duration?
Yeah. Some of it is kind of directed.
You said you started with Vine, which was 6 seconds. Now you're up to 40.
This is true. Imagine how I felt when Vine died and I was like, Instagram video is 15 seconds right now. It's like, that's triple what I'm used to. I'm just throwing in insert shots just because I can at that point. Yeah, so it depends, really. Some of it is directed by platforms. Like we see a lot of those short form platforms nowadays kind of gearing up more towards, TikTok is really pushing like 60 seconds or more. Instagram Reels also just recently announced that they're going for like 3 minutes. So really some of it is platform directed, and another part I recognized is that also I'm retaining more of the audience that finds those videos when they're longer versus when I have a few videos that are 8 seconds long on Instagram that have millions and millions of views. And then you look at how many people converted to following me, and it's like nothing in comparison to a video that had, 250,000 views that is 40 seconds long. I think it just sticks with people more.
Just the level of specificity of how much you know that is amazing. And it just really shows like your business, what works for your audience. And I love that you also mentioned that sometimes you do something that you think is going to hit and it doesn't work. Grace, from your perspective, leading a creative team, how do you sort of balance that? Because, you're dealing with clients who sometimes expect everything to go viral, but that's just not how it happens, right? How do you sort of balance like learning from what works, but also what doesn't?
Yeah, for sure. I think, and Patrick, I'm looking at you over here. I think it's about like building that trust together and taking your clients on the journey with you. I'll use, a viral moment we've recently had with Brisk as an example, Patrick, if I may. So we posted, something about food pairings, like very, very simple, like which snack pairs best with brisk. We posted it. It did well, but it did not go viral by any means. It was like a piece of always on content. But we saw some really interesting commentary, right? So we came back to the brand team with something that was like very out of left field and out of the box, stemming from that food pairings post. And it was weird. Like, I hope everybody watches it. It's extremely weird. And that went viral and that just like hit. So it wasn't completely random. So things will hit and it might seem random, but there is an insight there. And that was like trust that we built together. So I think it's just like, you know, staying on that journey together and always finding those insights, those learnings to figure out what's next.
Yeah, just to build on that, trust and manage expectations. And I think, you know, Grace and team have been very good at the onset to just kind of say, hey, listen, this is going to take time. And, we hit pay dirt within 6 weeks? So I don't think that's normal, but we will take it. And so, yeah, it's just all about also managing client expectations. And they've done a fantastic job to manage us from that perspective. So there you go. And yes, trust. Because I remember when this piece of content Grace showed us, I was like, I don't get it. And she's like, it's probably a good thing you don't get it.
Yeah, I think that the sort of marriage of, you know, testing something out, doubling down when it's working, turning that maybe into a series, right? Are there pairings of other things? You all just talked about sort of your series around Do You Rap? And you continue to build on that, right? And add new dimensions and grow your following. Because once you see what works, doubling, tripling down can turn into something as big as like, you know, a full-fledged campaign. And we've seen that many times at Vayner. So we talked a lot about platforms. You all know an absurd amount of information around platform detail, and we love that. But let's also talk about culture, because I think that like marrying those two things is really where the magic happens. You talked about sort of food pairings, but Patrick, you know, the Brisk brand historically, I believe, was into the claymation sort of space for a while. How do you all think about leveraging sort of culture moments to connect with consumers, whether, you know, in you know, beyond social or specifically in social?
Yeah, I think, listen, Brisk came to life back in 1990. And it kind of got really lucky during, you know, a time of when TV was kind of like really the only platform with claymation. Now, for those of you that may not remember, that's okay. I might be the only one that remembers that based off of my age, but it was very different. And it really was different in terms of what you would have seen from a TV spot back in 1995. And so fast forward almost, you know, 30 years later, we're now trying to replicate that on, you know, our social network. And again, as a brand, we've kind of ventured off trying to talk to a lot of different people, a lot of different ways. And, you know, this year we said, no, we're going to go speak to the growing cohort where we thought we had the most room and the most opportunity to drive relevancy and consideration with our younger consumer. The Gen Z, younger millennial consumer is where the buying power resides today and will in the future. And so it's now setting the groundwork for building the brand with that cohort. Now, how we're doing it, I think it's always for us the right partner. And so again, I'll go back to Vayner as being the right partner for us and really going at the speed of culture. And so being able to trust your creative team, but also be open to what's going on and listening. And that's really, you know, when I said, why am I here today? I'm here to listen. Because already I've learned some stuff I didn't know before. Because guess what? I might not be the expert in this field, but I want to partner with people who are. And I want to talk to people who are and learn from it so that we can take advantage of when things pop up and recognize when something is part of culture and try to be part of that conversation. We don't want to create it. I don't know if we're going to ever be there, but we want to be part of it. And I think that's the big piece for us.
I love that. Just like the theme of sort of distinctive assets is so important with brand building, right? Whether it's claymation or, you know, something else that will be born in the future, I think that continues to matter. It's also sort of like what y'all are sharing around niche content. Having something differentiated and distinctive that really stands out and breaks through is like so true, whether you're a creator or a brand. But on the Crash Adam side, y'all maybe tell us a little bit about operating at the speed of culture. Like, how long does it typically take you to produce something? Like, are you jumping into cultural conversations? How do you sort of prioritize your planned content with stuff that might be like reactive and of the moment?
I mean, it's got to happen fast. It's got to happen very fast, especially with culture. Like things move so quickly. An example for us would be we have this rap series where you go up to people and say, "Excuse me, can you rap? Excuse me, can you rap?" We had an idea one time. We didn't get to it, but Vision Pro came out. Throw Vision Pro in the video. It's part of culture. Boom, right away. People will recognize it right away. The comments will be going crazy, and that's an example of how we would do it.
And talk to us about like fast, just so you all have context. Often brand land, we're planning out like 6 months, 12 months in advance. How fast is fast in your world?
Hours.
Yeah.
We get into fights with our manager all the time because it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that fast. And we're like, it's got to happen tonight, right? Because like when a moment hits, you have to be ready because you don't know when you're going to get that next chance that might fit in your video or with your music or whatever you might be marketing at the time. For us, it's always music first. So I think when there's a chance to the Vision Pro is actually a great example of it because like right when that day that it came out, you saw videos all over social media, whether it was planted by Apple, likely of people on the subway with the Vision Pros, but every single video that you saw with a Vision Pro probably had at least 5 million views. So, and it's not necessarily the views that you want, but it's 5 million views is better than 25,000 views, and you have a lot more shots. You're just kind of taking shots at a dartboard, but you have a lot more of a chance that somebody might see the piece of whatever you're putting out and relate to it if it's seen, obviously, as opposed to not.
And Gregor, how about you? How are you thinking about sort of participating in cultural conversations? Are you doing comedic dialogues on Apple Vision Pro, or tell us about how that manifests in your work?
I was just gonna. Oh wait, is this on? Are we good? There we go. I was just gonna say, I got my Vision Pro video off, guys. Y'all missed it.
Good for you.
You guys got too many people. I'm one person. I said I'm out. No, yeah. But even that being said, funny enough, I posted that video to Snapchat and YouTube that night, the night of the day of the release, and all those videos were going crazy viral, and it did really well on those platforms. And I didn't post it to Instagram or TikTok because I was like, it's a little late in the day. Posted it the next day, paled in comparison to the performance from the previous day, which I kind of knew was going to happen, but I was like, ugh. But no, I think for the way I look at it is that I really do try to put an emphasis on content that can be kind of like evergreen, and coming up with jokes that may apply to a current topical scenario, but I'm gonna be able to show this video to someone in 6 months and have them still be like, oh yeah, this could have been shot yesterday. But that being said, those are kind of more like portfolio pieces, I feel. It's so important to have things that are topical and tapping into that culture to kind of like bring more people in. I'm sure people here have heard the comparison before, and maybe this is a bad comparison. We got musicians here. Well, but like there's like, you know, there's album cuts and then there's singles is kind of how I like to view it. So singles are like maybe more that topical tapping into culture stuff where you're going to bring in new audience. The album cuts are, you know, the 40-second, more scripted, more thought out videos, including the ones that flop because they're too obscure.
But the album cuts, great part about that is the album cuts is what's your fans, the people that really care, appreciate the album cuts. Exactly like you said, the single is the introduction. The rest of it is cultivating that fan base that actually really cares about you.
And those are probably almost separate cohorts, right? Like you're breaking through to new, you're trying to go viral on TikTok, on Reels. That's finding new people. But you've also got, you know, your Instagram feed posts, which get served to like your real fans. Y'all are all nodding because you're thinking about this the same way. I think about this a lot for our brands because we still need the hardworking product shots. We still need that, and we need the relevance pieces. And it's like really creating that harmony and leveraging platforms in the right way to be able to deliver to the people who really want to know every detail, who want the album cuts, but also finding the new people with your singles. So Grace, talk to us about how you think about crafting this harmony for our brand partners, because we still have product launches, we still have, you know, tentpole campaigns. How do you think about balancing sort of things that we know are coming and matter and are huge business priorities with also driving relevance?
Yeah, for sure. It's complicated, like it is, because to your point, like the big TV commercial still has a place. But can you hear me? Okay, sweet. Thanks, Aaron. Yeah. So like in our industry, there is still a tendency for like, you know, the year-long plan, the big campaign, the TV commercial, and like the content strategy to be figured out in a boardroom, like sold through, everybody agrees, and then it's out in the world maybe like 6 months later, and a lot of money is spent and a lot of time is spent, and that usually means that work just like trickles down to social and like finds its way there, and that like will never pay off. Like we know that doesn't work, but it's still happening all of the time. So I think it's really, you know, taking the time to, like I said, if you're working with an agency, to build that trust, bring your clients along with you to understand the time and place for everything. So if you do have that big, you know, splashy TV commercial, that's amazing, but how does it translate to TikTok? Because a little cut down of that like definitely will flop. Gen Z will disregard you. So if you are going after Gen Z, like have a unique strategy for that. And it's probably going to be like very inexpensive to like build that in. That's the thing. It's the underpriced attention. So just taking the time to make sure that it's well thought out. Social isn't like this afterthought. It still is a lot of the time, and we really need to flip that narrative.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing from you is it's a yes and. It's like yes in the big tentpole moments and the social relevance, and putting those things together in harmony. Like that's when you can really drive results across, you know, the full funnel.
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to end on a question about, we're here in Canada. I'm the American. I'm learning about all the things happening here in Canada. What are some of, and whoever can go first, what are some of the unique things that work in the Canadian market that you think are underappreciated?
I have a mic, so I'll just go.
Yeah,
first.
go, Grace.
From like the agency standpoint, I've worked with US teams who, you know, might be like, it'll just work in Canada, just like send it over and put it live. Like I think Canadians
I feel like
really,
that's some of our clients. Oh no.
It's fine. Like, and sometimes it does work. Like we're not so different, but there are like unique cultural truths about Canadians. So I feel like when we see brands putting the time and care into like, you know, knowing what those are and winking at us, we really appreciate that. So taking the time to kind of figure out what makes us unique as Canadians and putting that into the work will go a long way.
Yeah, I'll touch on, I mean, I've done a lot of different things and experimented with a lot of different things to specifically tap into the Canadian market when I thought like, you know, sometimes it helps leverage deals and also it's just more local and it makes more sense. And that's been everything from like the corniest of the corniest, like maple syrup jokes and whatnot. But then also things where it's like jokes that, you know, if you're American, you're just like, oh yeah, it's a joke, whatever. But if you're Canadian, you're like, oh wait, that relates to whatever, to like something that was in the news about Doug Ford or whatever. And you're like, oh, this like ties in. I've done everything. I think I hate to break it to everyone, but Canadians do tend to enjoy watching some stereotypes be put on screen. Harmless stereotypes. Yeah, there's more nuanced ways to do it. And we've seen a ton of success from creators that are in Toronto and also throughout Canada that are, you know, making a living doing videos specifically about Canadian topics that aren't the maple syrup stuff. That's more I think of Austin Alexander. If anyone knows Austin Alexander, he does like great stuff where he's impersonating Trudeau. And it's like more like niche topics that like, okay, even if you're an American who understands Doug Ford, Trudeau, or whatever, the inner workings of anything in here or in Canada, there's still like nuance to it and a niche to it that you're only really going to pick up on if you are Canadian, I feel. And that, I think, has helped creators like that really gain a strong following.
I mean, I would say for us as musicians, it is a little slightly different because our objective is obviously to get people to come to our shows and listen to our music. But I think just for something we've seen is just showing up, just being in Canada and saying, hey, we're here, we're in Toronto, we're in Vancouver, we're going to be in Halifax on the weekend, and just showing them that we appreciate and love the culture that we grew up with is something that really resonates with our fans.
Yeah, I would add to that is so we live in America. Seeing how Americans think about Canada versus what Canadians think about themselves. Canadians don't like being little brothered. And that happens a lot in America. So when a creator actually takes the time to learn about the Canadian culture while they're showing up, like just something as small as we'll use Tim Hortons as an example. Something as small as Timmy's. By the way, I actually miss Timmy's. but like something as small as that, showing up and being a part of the culture, it makes, because Canadians are proud to be Canadian. Like, we're proud of what we have. We're proud of the opportunity this country has given us. And a lot of the times on a worldwide scale, it gets overlooked just because there's only 30 million people here. Bringing attention to those details that make us Canadian really we've seen results that are like tenfold from what we even expected, just because Canadians are proud.
Yeah, I don't have a tremendous amount to add. I think what everybody's saying up here is, ultimately in a day, if you develop content that is directed at a Canadian consumer, however you want to do it, whatever it's your tonality, the culture, the way it's said, you're going to get credit. And, in this world where, 30 years ago, you can put a TV ad up here and I wouldn't know what's going on in the U.S., right? And so
with claymation, that works everywhere.
Well, yeah, but like looking at it now, right? Like, how irritated do people get when like it's Super Bowl? Like, well, Super Bowl, the U.S. gets all the best ads. Like, there's still that little bit of mentality. And so reverse that and say, okay, if you create content or you talk to a Canadian consumer up here, you're going to get a ton of credit for it. And guess what? I better not see the same thing in the U.S. or Europe or whatever, because you'll get called out for it. Be like, hey, listen, don't try to be too Canadian and then I see the same stuff elsewhere. That's not what Canadians do. And I think you're going to get a lot of passion and pride, regardless of what you share, if it's really, truly based starting right here in the Great White North.
I love it. What an amazing way to end this panel. I want to say huge thank you to everybody. I learned so much in this. Can't think of a better way to celebrate our first birthday. And I also want to say thank you to everybody who's on our live stream. We are doing a TikTok and I think LinkedIn live stream. So thank you guys for tuning in and joining us live. Thank you for the folks who are here in the room. Please join me in giving a huge round of applause to our incredible panel.